Good morning, Rebbe. Okay, let's go over to where we were, and let me see if I can find where we were. Okay, we're on page Reish, that's a Samach, Reich Sam V'Dalet. Let me take a look at what we're going here. It says, Bir Maimer HaZohar, Ki B'ler Pesach, Hu Zivuga Ilo B'Sitra De La'ele. Gam B'Zer Tavi, I can understand Masha Kosa B'Sefer HaZohar B'Parshas Emor. So we are in the middle of, let's see, on the third rush. I just want to point that out because we're moving along. Ki B'Leil Pesach, Hu Zivugi Ilocha B'Sitra De La'ele B'Lo B'Sitra De Lon. So the Yichud does not take place in this world, but it takes place by itself in the world, next world. Very long biurim on this. B'Hu Ki B'Shar Yomim Tovin Neknasi Lemochim B'Sedach HaMedregas B'Tivim. So that their nature is that I look up this Tivin, he says Kedarkum, their normal way. So it's really us that causes that yichud in Mayim Nukvin. Below Pesach, but on Pesach, it's not the same. Not in the natural way. It's not something that is produced from down below to up above, and then up above to down below. It doesn't work that way. We don't have that ability. We're not able to make something happen, boom, just like this. And this happens only because of the Rahmanas of Hashem. Gam Hagodol Haku Shalo Kederek Teva. So he meant Hagodol. So he makes this grayness only in Shalo Kederek Teva. Below the Asar Yedainu Elamel, but actually it comes from the Ein Sof Baruch Hu. So now you can understand why it's forbidden to have yichud on the night of Pesach. Masha Ein came b'sharcha Yomin Tovin Shehutar b'Zivug Aleinu. B'Adar Rabbah. Yesh Chiyuv Mitzvahs Oina. There's not only that, but it's a special time for this. Yad, it's mesugel for that. Yan Ki Al Yudei. Another very long beer here. Tachtonim Na'asa Oz HaZivug Elyon. That's how the lower world makes the Zivug Elyon. Avach below Pesach. Shein the Zivug Elyon Na'asa Yedainu. It's not done by us. Ne'eber Na'aser. Lono Hazivah the Tachton, so we're not allowed to do the uppers to the yichud here because it's something that has to do with being made up above to down below only. But we see people learning all night long. Like it's written like this: Maaseh Rebbe Eliezer, Rebbe Elazar ben Azariah. We have that quote from the Haggadah. So he says, so now you understand what is written in the Sefer HaZohar, B'Parshas Emor. Because when we talk about the Inyan of the counting of the Yomer, this is the same idea as the 7 clean days that a woman has to undergo midoraisa after her menstrual period. So today, so he says today. So the same idea is that this is the same idea. This is that you have Shavuos as a woman. So the concept of Malchus, make a yichud going all the way to a yichud in the very highest levels. He says, Lamala B'Chag HaShavuos, which happens then. Because Tuva, but this is a big problem. Now, I had to try to really work on what he means is the problem here. The Kevin Shohay is Zivug Elyon B'Leil Pesach. So since there's a Zivug on the night of Pesach, like we're talking about, Im came Chayvach B'Yontz's Mecholos Tuma Shal Golos Mitzrayim. So he says this word Cholos, which I'm translating like, let's see, he has, let me see if I can find it down here. He says, Cholos, where's Cholos? I know you found it already. Cain, Hadrech, Beyotzach, and Cholos, Tuma, Shel, Galus, Mitzrayim, because of that Tuma. The Kavod is Batlach, Avachizis, the Kitzonim. So the Kitzonim were already knocked out. So he said, Vakasha Tuva. He says the Kavan Shahoya Zivug Elyon Belel Pesach, since the Yichud is not motivated or motivated from down below to up above. So he says if that's the case, Im came that we're out already from the tomb of Eretz Mitzrayim. It takes us out of there. So therefore, she should be in a position where she could make a yichud. She is pure, like that's an idea. So why would we count after this yichud takes place 7 more days that we'd have to go through days of cleanliness? So what is there? I'm not really sure that I understand that well. Let's go on. So now you can explain it better. You said, but you can understand this from what we said before. He wants to say that in Pesach night, there shouldn't be have to be any waiting about, I think he means to say about Yichud. We can come back to this another time. He said, but there is a leftover here. Let me go back. From which you have to become purified. It comes from the 5 damim shal tuma that we picked up a certain amount of tuma as a result of the fact that the Mitzrayim had been feeding off of the mochin in das in the neck area. And as a result of that, there's a lot of tumah around because they're attached to that. Mitzrayim b'mitzrayim levusha gevuras metamsis hanishar misigehim, so that there's some leftover element of those pasulas. Keniska the like mentioned before, v'lechein kid tzricha d'tachar ma'ozam adamim etamim. So therefore, those damim that we talked about before, which is the revua and the lavush of the akias. Because they were going backwards in time, that they were really dealing with the chasadim and the gevurs. Once again, the mochim of das, which is in the neck. That's where they were getting all of their stuff from, their nourishment from. But in night of Pesach, he deals there anpin berega echad. He grows in one moment to full size, or to the level of godless sheni. So he goes to all of these out of Katnas Rishon. First comes Katnas Rishon, and then he goes all the way up to Gadol Sheni. So that really interrupts those damim of the action that they have. And as a result of that, the connection that the Kitzonim had, and this is, he's saying, all because of what came first. Lo bezer anfin v'lo benukva klal v'ikar v'lechein netahara. So therefore she becomes pure. That's what happens. It knocks out all the klipos, all the damim, and so on and so forth. And you don't have to count 7 days after that. Because at that moment she becomes completely pure. But now he says like this. So that was to tell you what the difficulties that or overcome as a result of the night of Pesach. But on the next day of Pesach, shall Pesach is talkul amochin leave. They go back to grab a hold of the blood again. They go right back to that same situation. In other words, again, like we said, that the situation goes back to the same thing again. But it's not the same because it was purified one time. So the original chiza that the Kitzonim had to the back of the neck of Zeranpin, That's wiped out, but now they come back again. But they're not the same because they were wiped out one time. And they go back to the levushim, which are the ekis in Revua. He goes and grabs them again. And then the mochim have to come back and say their madregos. They're different every day, different thing. So the same way that I guess in the order, when he says achizasam, 1 second, let me see what he says. Achizasam, he says shalakitzayin ba'osam adamim. So at the time, so Gafi Seder Kanisasam. So I'm a little confused about the word Seder, because he makes it sound like they go one after another, or there's some order to how they grab a hold of this level. So he says Gafi Seder Kanisasam kahu Seder Bittul Achizasam lat. The same thing is that apparently it takes 49 levels of Tumah, that we got to 49 levels of Tumah, I guess what he means. So he says something like that, and as a result of that, now they're starting over again. And this all happens where they are being moved one at a time during the days of the Sfiras Omer, so there's a lot to be said about this too in the Biurim. And then he says, and then this is the way to ultimately remove them completely, so that you should be pure at the time of Shavuos. Then the big time yichud takes place, commotion, as we're going to get to that, but as it's Hashem inyan zeh, but there's a big problem here. Shim came SHAAR Yemecha Pesach. How could it be the rest of the days of Pesach if we said that the yichud that took place that brought Zer Anpin all the way to the level of Gadol Sheni? He said, what happens the rest of the days of Pesach? Because it's still Yom Tov. Shim came Sha'amber Yemecha Pesach Dekroim Yomim Tovim. So how could there be Yomim Tovim? V'kevin Shagadayim Adar Nitacharo Metumasach Al Chag HaShavuos, and said because the tumah came back and it's really not in a perfect, it's not in that high level again. How about them? He said of the Lamata, so down below he said Be'inyan Yom Shvi Shal Pesach, Be'inyan Kriyas Yom Suf, and all those two things, there are answers, and we will be able to get that later on. Let me get a drink here. We'll start the fourth drush. So we've been deeply involved with Zer Anpin and what's going on in Zer Anpin. Drush HaPesach, Drush Dalad, Yivoyer, Inin, Achometz. What's pshat? And they have these two different words. V'chasor, Ma Inyan of Pesach. What's so important about them on Pesach? He says, Aval Hadrash hu Melukat. But he wants to let you know that this is like patching together a bunch of different drushes. So he says, let's go on. So the Torah tells about lots of different names of words that are used. So you have this phrase. So then we have another phrase with machmetzes. So let's say you shouldn't eat it. So he says, then we have this pasuk. Batzor, what's the difference? And so he says, B'shar, well, their leftovers that were bound, they bound them in their garments. But Inyan, who the Inyan is like this. Who's that? He says, Da. Kibazer Anpin Yeshnei Bechinus Mochim. He has two different aspects of Mochim. Echad Salim de Ima, ve'echad Salim de Abba. It's simple enough. One is side of the other. Ushneichem is echad b'toch zeh. They are like one inside the next. K'noidav. Avachavani, but I, Mesupak, kama b'masher shemati. But I really don't, never sure. I'm a little doubt about what I actually heard about this. Im shemati shuhu b'bechid b'mochin the katnas or the godless. Whether we're talking here about mochin the katnas or godless. The yesh pon of the khan, so there's different kinds of ways that this could be looked at to understand how they could go. Ve'ein biyadi lahachriya, but I can't decide which one it is. V'dechein echtov as kol hadrosh bebechidim b'mochim stam. So I'll just use the word mochim. Lo askir im heim the katnas of the godless. I'm not going to get into that. So I'm not sure exactly. There was, I think, probably a lot more to be said there, but we're moving along. V'hine b'chine b'shem chometz, hu b'mochin de b'tzad abba. So chometz goes with abba, he says. Just looking at him, it has the word chom, which we read before. It was in number 48, which is like aspects of the name Elokem. It also has the letter tzaddik associated with it. So exactly how that works, I'm not sure, but let's go on. Hu b'mochin de b'tzad abba. V'shem seor, that word. Hu b'mochin de b'tzad ima. Ki dinin de ima chahim yoseh tekifim al shal abba. So he said that, so therefore it's going to go with the idea of seor. So let's see some more about this. So he said, b'dimin ha-seor shekocho chazok min ha-chometz. It's like with the nature of this leavening process, that it's stronger than chometz. Ki ha-seor machmitz lacherim, it has the ability to make others to spread. So therefore you see there's a stronger binding to the chitzonim. So it's going to be more powerful. It's going to come from the ima side. So it should be written with the vav. So let's talk about soar. He says goes with ima. He says the shin goes with the chachma of ima. Shehu Shem Elokim de Yudin, because we know the gematria of Elokim de Yudin is 300. Ola gematria shin. V'os areish, now the reish that is part of the word seor, he can negate the muach the bina chabitzad ima, so that's the bina side. It's the left side of the left side. V'hu Elokim pashad berivua shehu ola reish. So it's a concept of an Elokim kim and a rivua, which comes to gematria of 200. Since that's going to be more din than chokhmah, he says, so therefore it's depicted, or it is automatically wants to say, an acharayim delokem. So that shows you right away the nature of the minimization that took place there. So he says, V'os Aleph. Now this is a little harder here. He says the letter Aleph, Muach Hadas the B'tzad Ima. So let's just understand that's a letter, one of the letters in the Seor. It represents the Das. Shuhu Shem Elokim B'milu Elofim. That's the name Elokim if you make it Milu Elofim. Which makes it, I think, 291. V'lechein Aleph Zuchu the Romezes al Hiyos Miluyav Ba'alofim. So this is a reference to the fact that the Milui of this is going to be in Alofim. Let me see it again. The Milui of Elokim will Alofim. But it's not as strong, not as powerful as the other two Mochim. So therefore we don't show it. We don't count within it the cheshbon of the milui, which makes it back down to, what did we say? We said that a milui of alofim is one, as we said, 291. It's 290. Milui of rak or raz milui of kum alofim, but only the thing we see about it, we don't take that into account. We take the miluyim of just this with the alofim. Kenitzker, as mentioned before, Nimsa, Kimilas Sor, Hu Klalos. He says, what is Sor? It's Klalos Shlosha Mochin Gezer Anpin Bitzad Ima. That really refers to the three Mochin, the Chabad, from the Ima side. So there it feels like this is coming from Kadnas, because we've been talking about Elokems. Elokems always talk about Kadnas. The chametz who b'mochin the b'tzad Abba, but that's the lesser of them. It's from the side of Abba. So he said, I've already let you know this. Inyan eitz hadas tov v'ra. What about that? So he said, where did he tell us this? In SHAAR Pesukim, Parshas Bereshis, he says. Shehu Bechinas Yisod the Ima Shebedas Zer Anpin. This is the concept of the Ima, of the Yisod of Ima, inside of the Das Zer Anpin. Now, he's just taking his back for it. It's not exactly a straight definition. Let's see what he says. He says, Asher Nipsak B'chazav, with that, this Yisod of Ima, which is inside of the Das of Zer Anpin, it goes all the way down to the chest. B'sham Hum Izgal, and in that place it's revealed. So the place where it's revealed there, you're going to have some grasp of the chitzonim onto that. So it comes out like this. Chametz and Seor are really Zecharim, they're male aspects. Because they're mochin that are destined to go into Zer Anpin, mitzad Abba, mitzad Ima, respectively. If we hear Yosem v'dayim b'sochel, when they're still inside of Zer Anpin, yesh k'tzatz achizah l'chadinim. There's some hold because Zer Anpin is exposed to dinim. He says achizah eladinim. V'omnam machmetzes umesha'eres hem b'chinas elu b'chiyoseh b'sod nekeva. So he says that there, these male forms, when they're in the yesod of the nekeva, they Misha'eres Hem Bechinas Elu Bechiyoseh Besoda the Keva. So there's some aspect of them when they're in the Yesod of the Keva. Vayinyan Hu Kihine Leah. So let's go back and try to understand this. He says Leah Omedes B'mamish Ba'achreich Mochin Deser Anpin. So where is Leah located? She's located around in the back of the head. So this was also the place of the neck. The Yonekes Bisham, that she actually feeds or is built up off of the Rosh of Zer Anpin. V'na'asa ba b'chinas mochin shaba, and from Zer Anpin makes mochin into Leah. But b'chinas ha'aras hayotzes, and to the aspect of the ha'ar, so that radiance of light that goes up and mochin to Abba and Leah, that winds up going into Leah. Nikras machmetzes nukva. It's called the making of chametz in the nukva. Ha'ara hayotze b'mochin de'ima. So the ha'ara that comes out of the mochin de'ima al Leah, nikras mesha'eres nukva. Let's just read this again, because he goes in these different ways. He says the mochin that are in Abba, that are going to shine into Leah, nikras machmetzes nukva. So chametz goes along with Abba. So what he's bringing into her is going to be what causes chometz in the female aspect. Now she's also, Ima is outside of Abba. Abba's inside of Ima, and the light of Abba has to go through Ima in order to get to Leah. He says, at any rate, he says of it means the leftovers of the female leftovers. Umidas machmetzes is derived min chametz, misha'eres min seor, and so these two words, misha'eres means leftover, comes from the concept of seor. B'hina machmetzes hu osius chametz tam. That's what it is, chametz tam. Now he's working through some languaging here. He says the word machmetzes can actually be broken down into two words, chametz tam. V'chein misha'eres hu sor tam. Also, same word. So what's going on? He says, so what's tam? So that's a question. What does tam mean? Rotza lomer baila de matronisa. He says this is really referring to the baila, the husband of the matronisa, Leah, Nikras tam, which is called tam. Who's called tam? The male. Rotza lomer baila de matronisa, Leah, Nikras tam, besod umidis yamai mahi. What are they? Tam. So he says, besod, he says, Rotza lomer baila de matronisa is called tam. Besod Midas Yamai Mahi Midas Tam, and then it says Midas Tam, and then the letter Dalet. Now, what does that mean? We're going to look at this a little bit because it got past me. So, if a Rotza Lomer Hamokim shall chametz Hameirin b'Leah nikros Tam. They're called then mochin that shine into Leah, who's called Tam. Who's the Tam? Leah or the mochin? A nikros machmetzes. So let me read again. Chometz and meirin b'Leah a nikros Tam. So that's the mochin that are shining into Leah. Nikros machmetzes. That's called making chometz. V'mochim shechab so'or hameirin b'Leah a nikros Tam. Nikras Mesha'eris, so it's called a leftover somehow. Now, what exactly does it mean? So I went back to try to pick this up, and in the Pirush he says Tam Daled. I looked at that place. It's down towards the bottom of the page, bottom of the column. V'sod ha'inyan hu ki ha'kelim denetzachod yisod shel ima. Hamalvishim es amochin deima shebetoch zer anpen. So he said what? He says hineki hakelim, the kelim which are covering over the mochin deima, that is the nai shebetoch zer anpen. Heim arba shemos ekya malayim. There are 5 different names of ekya in a milui. Lebechem nimshakim al Leah arba pamim aleph, and from there they shine into Leah 4 different olives. Aleph in a milui form, like we just saw, well, we see here, which is a gematria of 111. So he says, Arba Pamim Aleph, Malayim Shehem Kaminyan Midas, which is the word Midas. So here he has the Midas Tam Dalet. So what's the Dalet? What we're talking about? So now Midas, once again, is the milui of four olives. And I want to read it again because I'm trying to figure out where the olives comes from. V'sod ha'inyan hu ki hakeda denetzachod yisod shal imam is amslavshim b'soch as amochin de'imel shebetzoch zer anpen heim arba shemos ekya. So the levush here is an ekya. Bechem nimshakim al Leah arba pamim aleph. So from those ekyas that are inside, each one of them sends over to Leah its aleph, the first letter. So he thought Malayim Shehem Kaminyan Midas. So an aleph in the milui, it sends over like that. So in other words, it's an aleph, just a plain simple aleph. As it goes into Leah, though, this is what I'm thinking. And as it goes into Leah, it becomes a milui. A Malayim, it spreads out into Leah Shehem Bechinas Midas, which is 4 of them make 44. Ella sha'arba balafim beshutim heim bekeser shal Leah, but there's 4 peshutim in the keser of Leah, besod kasher tefillah, which is the kasher tefillin shal rosh shuhu sir dalid, which is in the form of a dalid. So he says midas, that's the 4 olives. Tam, I guess Tam is, I didn't really get it, whether or not it's the light, it's another name for Leah, we'll pick it up later, or whether it's the light that's going into Leah. So Midas Tam is Dalit. There's 4 of them. So he says, Rosh Shuhu Sir Dalit. Let me go back. Ella Sha'ar B'chalafim Peshutim Heim B'keser Shal Leah Besod Kesher Tefillin Shal Rosh, which is in the form of a Dalit. Lebechem lo hisig Yaakov al. So this, up to that level, that is the level of the Rosh of Leah, where these alafim, peshutim, are located, he says that Yaakov never reaches that level. So Yaakov really is at the chaz of Zer Anpin. I'm not sure what he meant by that. That seems like it has a lot more into it. I will make a note on that for a second. So he said, Al-Kain, Nigrach of a rock, Ish Tam. So therefore, Yaakov is called an Ish Tam. And he hasn't got to the light, the level of the Olofim and Leah. He got to that light. So there's a lot there. For Rotza Lomar, so let me read a little bit more. Hamochim shall chometz, the mochin that come from Abba's side, which are chometz shebezer anpin shehem mitzad Abba, b'chalukam v'yotzechem v'beirim b'leach nikros Tam. So now we have a definition of Leah. They go and they shine into Leah, who is called Tam. Ayidei zen nikros machmetzes, and so therefore that's making something into chometz. Notrikon chometz tam. It's the chometz for Leah. Leah is the tam. So the mochin that have to do with Sa'or, which is coming from the Imadika side. Shebezer Anpin, Shehe Mitzad Ima, Bachelkam Hayotzim, and he has a special letter here on the hay, I'm not sure what that means. Ima Bachelkam Hayotzim and Meirim Balayat Nikros Tam, who is called Tam. So this is the kind that she makes, we can't translate it as a leftover, but it's this concept of Sor. Sor, I guess, maybe is the concept of a power that remains even after it's turned into humus. It's much stronger. It's still there. Notricon. So, but it's also, he says, Sor Tam. Let's go back up to the top again. And he said, "V'hare mevar inyan nisbar." So now we inyan halavim shabatorah. So now it's been explained what's going on with the love in the Torah. K'tzantzim b'dechura v'cheim lo ya'achal chametz. For example, so in Pesach, so we have lo ya'achal chametz. So li'lemasach b'betechem. So we have these two different sides. K'tzantzim b'nukvach k'mo kol machmetzes lo sochelo. So some of them are in the nukva, like for example that phrase. And going on, that phrase. Let me get into it more, he says. So we have this concept of the 4 amos in Eretz Yisrael. What is going on here? B'shar Gimel, B'shar Ma'amari Rashbi, Ma'amari Razal Sar B'dav Vav, he said, B'difus from that era. So look over there. There are actually 4 different bechinos. Behulam Nikros Leah, and all of them are called Leah. Now, if you go back to what we learned in the Rishash, is Leah actually comes in the davening. You see it also. The kales, the hakale is Leah. So we'll see Nikros Leah. So there are 4 different levels of Leah. Shtayim mitzad mochin da Abba, Shtayim mitzad mochin da Ima. So he says that Leah actually has to develop from these 4 different levels. This drush of the Shmona Esrei Nashim Shara B'melech Muter Bechem. So there's apparently in Shara Mitzvahs in Parsha Shoftim, there's an old Indian about the 18 women that are in Muter for a king to marry. I am Sham V'Sham, so look over there. V'Sham is Boyer Midisham Ki Ashtaim. So there it's explained that the 2, the Mitzad Abba that come from the side of Abba, Harishon Bechem Nidbekas B'Yisod the Abba. So the first of them, let me read this again. V'Ayin Sham V'Sham is Boyer Ki Ashtaim the Mitzad Abba. So there are 2 on the side of Abba. Harishon Bechem Nibdekas B'Yisod the Abba. The first of them is clinging onto the Yisod of Abba, Shebetoch Das Zer Anpin, which is inside of the Das Zer Anpin. Now, this is shining over into Leah. So this is the first part of it. One is Nibdekas B'Yisod the Abba. So it's still stuck onto the Yisod of Abba. This is the place immediately next to, I guess, the Yisod of Abba, Shebetoch Das Zer Anpin, which is inside of the Das Zer Anpin. The other one is clinging onto the Yisod of Ima, Shebetoch Das Zer Anpin. So this is male and female. So you have the Abbadik side, you have the Imadik side, both of them representative. V'hashtaim, so he says, and the 2, the Mitzad Ima that are on the side of Ima. Harishon bechem nivdech v'Yisod the Ima. V'acheres omedet b'chutz v'achrei Zer Anpin, but it's this all outside on the backside of Zer Anpin. Minachazal l'umala, from that's the position of Leah, ad keneged moechadas Zer Anpin. At any rate, what you have is this is the first Leah. The nimsaki has shlosh bechinas the Leah. So there are 3 different aspects of Leah. Hey, bifnim, they're inside of Zer Anpin, toch Zer Anpin. But bechinas the revius, but there's a 4th level, and this is the level that we understand is actually where Leah is manifest. He bechutz the Zer Anpin, she's outside of that point of Zer Anpin, and there's actually an entity there called Leah. ולכן בסור הרביעי העומדת בחוץ אפשר שתתעסק בו החיצוני. So since it's no longer in Zeir Anpin, and it's a radiance coming from the Yesod of Zeir Anpin, once again, we have a place where they could grab a hold of these chitzonim. V'lechem nikras zos, so therefore it's called zos hakitzona mishaeris. So therefore it's called mishaeris. So you're saying that this place, the fourth place, in which we fourth bechina of Leah, which is outside of Zeir Anpin, we called it by this name mishaeris. It attracts, I guess, the other side. Rotzel lomer or Tom. So this is back to this word, the sor of Tom, which is the word Mishaeris, which means the Tom is Leah. He says now that sor is the Tom ki he Leah hanimshechet mochan the ima. That part of her is actually coming out of the mochan the ima hanikras or kanizkar, because ima is also known as sor. Now there's a lot of metaphor here. I think that a lot could be said about it, but we're going on. Sor kanizkar. Yesh called dinim rabim of the shtei sibos. So there are multiple dinim here because of two reasons. If one case that mokin dinim are misara from ima. So if they're coming from the mokin de ima, vim the yosem b'chutz, and also that they're no longer inside a Zeir Anpin. So he said v'lechein yesh pachad. So therefore there's a worry here. Shema yisachsu, is that the word Shema? He says Shalo yisachsu b'chitzonim. The kitzonim potentially could grab over here, but tzrikish shimur godol midchitzonim. So therefore it has to be guarded. We're talking about this Leah who now appears on the outside. V'lechein yesh dei bechinus. So there are two bechinos. Ha'achas he nikras matzah shemora. So then we had something called guarded matzah. V'acheres matzah she'ena shemora, or what is not guarded. Ki Leah shenis shall abach humeded bifnim, which is inside of Zeir Anpin. So this second Leah, which is coming out of the abadika side and is standing bifnim inside, he says Talmid he shemura b'milchitzani v'chedemachmeses. So because of that position, it's not going to become chometz. It's over there because it's still inside of Zeir Anpin. Now he's also metaphoring that the making chometz, making something into chometz, is really the same concept as the forces of the klipos. But then we talk about this second layer of ima, which is now inside of Zeir Anpin. So we're comparing what the Abba Ve'ima in terms of where the radiance is located of Leah. So one is on the inside, one is on the outside. So he says, going back, Abba Leah Hashenis Ashal Ima, Ha'omedes Chutz Zeir Anpin, Nikras Matzah, a matzah she'ena shemur. It's called unguarded matzah. Ma'atzbach the kiyos b'chutz from herself because of the fact she's now exposed. So therefore we have to be very careful about her, that she should not turn into chometz. Tom. So what should we call Tom? Tachzer chas v'shalom will come back and he has a whole big drushim over here. It's a long, very long. The yischapek la'osius mace, to become instead of Tom, to turn the letters around, it's interesting, and make them into a mace. Hamorim alachiza, which is really teaching us what? Alachiza chitzayna v'nikras mavis, which are called that. Going on. So let's see where we're at here. So he said, "B'kanaida," says as is known. Zechave'inyan hashimor ku shetachzor ha'orosecho likoned b'fnim toch Zeir Anpin. So the way to protect her is that she should come back inside of Zeir Anpin again. Below tishar b'chutz kol sheves yemei Pesach. Now this may be an aspect of how he's answering that. She shouldn't. That question that he had is, how does it continue to be this is considered a Yom Tov, if in fact it's exposed to the Kali, which we just saw over here, and it's going to get schmutzed up too. So he said, "Va'inyan the shimur who shetachzo harasecha," that her lights of Leah. Now, exactly that. Maybe that word harasecha there. What do we mean by that? What's radiating out of Leah, which could attract the Kali? She goes back in. Likona bifnim toch zer anpin v'lo sishar mechutz kol sheves yimei Pesach. So the whole 7 days of Pesach, she's not going to be out there. So now you're going to understand what we're talking about in the first drush. In the Charosis also, there's something here on Charosis, it could be talked about here. He says, because he says like this, Ki kol kavanas leil Pesach, the whole idea of the kavana of the leil Pesach, hu bebechinas rachel v'lo b'leah. Oh, just a second, wait a minute. So he said that Leah goes back inside of Zer Anpin, because of the exposure that she would have to the klipos. But everything we're doing here is going to be for the sake of Rachel, not Leah. So the question is what going on with Leah? Why did we come in? We wanted to talk about Leah, how Leah develops in 4 stages. One, the last stage, which is Imadik, is going to be outside of Zer Anpin. Now he says, but she has to come back inside of Zer Anpin, because we don't really focus on Leah on the night of Pesach. So then what do we focus on? He called Kavanas Leil Pesach, hu bebechinas Rachel v'lo b'leah. The Fisha Leah misbatelas b'Pesach b'nekneset b'fnim. That's what he just described. Kedei shelo yin koach chitzoni b'menu. So I would think offhand, wouldn't it be that Rachel would be even more exposed and she's below? But though since we did it, we guarded her, we pulled her back in, Pesach, and I guess that's the amount of time that she's actually guarded inside. This so that Leah, that upper part of the female aspect, is not bothered by the Kitzoni. In the Shemeres Melech, so it's guarded from them. Mikan ve'elo kol yemos hashana. So therefore, then time on, he says that was a big idea actually. Let me just look at it one more time. That Leah is in the Shemeres Melech by herself. Mikan ve'elo kol yemos hashana. The whole year long, she's going to be guarded, because what we say that on Pesach she goes back and is protected. So not worried about the fact that she's outside as her anpin. So therefore we're not commanded al achilas chametz or ela b'sheves yimei Pesach. That's the only time that we have to do this, that we have to eat, we have to be guarded about chametz, or only during that time. She's Leah. Apparently it's really talking about that Leah goes back in, that her radiance goes back inside of Zer Anpin during that period, and so therefore that's a time that we're not going to be exposed to Chametz or Seor. So let's see what else we have to say. V'zu hi the tshuva sheheshiva Rebbe Shimon Bar Yochai. This is the answer that Rebbe Shimon gave the Rebbe Elazar Beno b'Sefer Hazor in Parshas Emor. He said, "K'sheshal lo lama lo nitztavina chavakol yemot zashana al iser chametz v'seor." So he said, "Why don't you really? What if it's such a big problem? Why isn't it all year long?" Look over there. He says he doesn't bring it to us. He says, "Look over there. You'll see what he says." Now there could be in the Biurim, or there could be a lot more over here. Let's go on. And the Vayar Ata. So let's explain now. What actually becomes of Leah Hamis Betelis B'Sheves Yimei Pesach? So what happens to her on that 7 days of Pesach? So where does she go? What happens? That's what we said. As they're gathered up inside, or they're entering in, there isn't any place for them really up above. So therefore, where do they go? So he said, now you have these mochim that are on the outside. There's going to be a shmira to the chametz over there. We're going to bring it right back in, so it doesn't turn into or, I guess, or I'm not sure which sequence there. I got that right. But he says, but at any rate, they come back into Zer Anpin and they can't stay. There's no room. It's in the neck. V'hem yordechem b'derek penimis toch hagorim, so they go into the throat, down inside of Zer Anpin, to Zer Anpin, ad lamata b'Zer Anpin b'chazer shalo, and then where do they go? These are the Mochen of Leah. They're now moving down into the chaza area, Zer Anpin v'sham yotzes ba'ach v'chaza, and there you see on the backside of the chaza, because we'll say that Leah is on the backside. V'niknasim b'rosh Rachel, and they go into the head of Rachel from that position. Ha'omed sham ach ba'ach im Zer Anpin, who just happens to be standing there, back to back with Zer Anpin. Now this is inviting that in the upper worlds, this is the position that we're talking about right now, on the night of Pesach, the position with Leah, etc. V'achar kach nivoyer ma na'asim ha'aros ha'elel beriditam b'rosh Rachel. So now we're going to talk about that. So he said, let me see what he says. So I got that right. So he says like this, he says that b'techila, Sarta says Tam, we have to have a reason. What's actually what we're worried about over here? But when they go out to Rachel, we're not worried about it. So first of all, that's mashma that they go out to Rachel. Rachel's in a lower place. She's more chitzoni, perhaps. So he said al Rachel. And there are a lot of different reasons. Really? Why would that be? The first reason is she's not really a parts by herself. But actually what she is, she's an aspect of the Acharayim of Ima. That Acharayim of Ima, if you remember back to the Otras Chaim, Shenoflu, it fell into Sham Lamata, into the Karka of Etzilus, Lamata Be'ez Bittel Malchel Edom. Vatama Sheni, that's the first one. So what was the answer? How's that answer work? So I worked that out. So Vatama Rishon, the first reason, why is it that Rachel is not in such a danger? And the first thing he said is that she's not in such a big danger. I want to read that again, if you don't mind. I'm sorry. He says, "Atama Rishon hu lefisha Leah ain't parts of the atzbach of b'shar partzufim the betzilus avach of hiba bechinas acharayim the imish and naflu." So acharayim should be like a revuah, really. So that acharayim the ima that we know that fell at the time of the shvira. Sham Lamata Be'ez Bittel Malchi Edom. So that's the first idea, is that what? That it's something that fell down, and that, I'm not really, so Leah is weaker to begin with, or she's really a broken piece of Bina. V'chatam Hasheni hu the Bechinas of Makomos, in the places. Ki Leah omedet b'makom ha'oros ha'chok mekusin, because in Zer Anpin, so he's going to explain. The place which is covered up. Therefore, the Chitzonius have a power to be able to get a hold of what's coming out of that area, of the Mechusa, because the light is shielded. But she's down below the Chazak of Shoshama, Oros, and Megula, that there the lights of Zer Anpin are wide open. But Daimon L'Or Hashem is like the lights of the sun, Hayotze Menateko, that comes out, that appears. She'ena Ayin Ra Shel Yitzoni Yechola the Histako, because the evil eye of the other side, the jealous eye of the other side, is not able to look at that. The Chazak is too bright. So he says, the third reason, Bonivoyer Gam came Tam Lama Rachel im Zer Anpin Omdim Ach Ba'ach, and here we also explain this concept. Leah im Zer Anpin Omdim Ponim, the Leah, Neged Ach the Zer Anpin, remember that? But the whole idea is that Rachel is in back to back and Leah is poning the back. He said, when she's up high, she's up above Rachel. The Chibsonim don't get a hold of her that much. On the road, we want to give them, it's also a little bit hard to understand, a little shtick shtickle, to keep them happy. The Imlecha became Bilecha Mavis, and that's if not, then you're going to wind up complete the discovery, destroying the other side. So the klipos, excuse me, v'hakipos sorach gavohahem. So the klipos have to be, if you're going to have klipos in our world, which we have which the Meibster wants in our world, he says that sorach gavoha v'chein b'cholamos kamosha amach hakasa, that the pasuk says. So we're running out of time, so it'll be our last pasuk. V'hine tov ma'od, tov ma'od. So he said, what is tov ma'od? Tov zal malach hachayim. Ma'od, so we see this drush from other places. Ma'od is zecher b'malach hamavis. V'lachein penei Leah, so therefore Leah. Omedek eneged achrei zer anpin. She's that way. Achrei Leah nish'arno begilui k'dei d'sei zechiza alachitzonim. Now how about this idea? The reason why she actually turns her back is to offer her backside to the Kitzonim, sheyikchu chelkam. They could get a shtickle from her. Vein on the Uraim, so but we're not worried about that. That's a whole Indian really could be discussed. So he said that. So what he said, what was the last part? Vein on the Uraim, we're not afraid of the fact she is also bechem ma'od l'ki Yosef b'malkom elyon kenizgar that goes in such a high place. Okay, and I guess that's the shear. Next week. Next week I have a wedding. My granddaughter's getting married, but Hashem. And so I'm going to learn on Monday morning because we're a little later flight. And then after that, Friday.
Okay.
Call to Rabbi. Thank you.